An active investigation led by the FBI after yet another attack on federal agents involved in immigration enforcement. The attack
What happens when the fog over Los Angeles no longer hides a city, but hides a war? When a quiet pre-dawn street becomes the front line of the largest political criminal infiltration ever uncovered on American soil? And what does it mean for a nation already shaken by global instability, from escalating cartel violence to renewed great power confrontation reported daily by Reuters and BBC in early 2025, when the threat comes not from abroad, but from inside the government itself? At 4:32 a.m., Los Angeles lay frozen under a layer of cold marine haze, its skyline flickering like a dying signal. Then the first flashbang shattered the darkness. The explosion echoed through alleyways as federal justice erupted across the basin. According to the seized operational logs, DEA, FBI, and ICE strike teams executed simultaneous raids on 7 underground casinos, 11 cartel-run bars, 3 illicit massage fronts, and 4 warehouse complexes stretching from downtown LA to Riverside. Agents in black moved through the fog like silent silhouettes, their shadows cutting across neon reflections. Inside a hidden Koreatown casino, chaos detonated instantly. Slot machines burst open from the breach blast. Poker chips scattered like shrapnel. 5 couriers sprinted for an emergency exit with duffel bags crammed with cash and narcotics, only to be taken down before the fog could swallow them. Within 40 minutes, 168 suspects were in custody. But the seizures told a deeper story. Agents recovered $19.4 million in cash, 320 kilograms of cocaine, 1.2 tons of methamphetamine, and 840,000 fentanyl pills, disguised as prescriptions enough synthetic poison officials later noted to erase entire neighborhoods. The quantity aligned with broader 2025 national security warnings from The Guardian and DW, which reported a surge in fentanyl-linked deaths and cross-border criminal operations now considered a strategic threat level risk to U.S. domestic stability. Yet none of that compared to what lay beneath the hardwood floor of a VIP gambling suite. 2 encrypted hard drives sealed in steel boxes quietly rewrote the fate of California. When analysts at the FBI Cyber Lab cracked the first drive shortly after sunrise, the screen glowed with a digital map labeled Project Solaris, a sprawling web of shell corporations, offshore accounts, forged charities, and manipulated state programs. The files exposed money laundering routes stretching across continents, echoing patterns highlighted by Al Jazeera's 2025 investigation into transnational cartel finance networks. Then came the revelation that froze the room. Every authorization, every masked directive, every disguised transaction carried one signature: Governor Alexander Alex Cortez, a sitting U.S. state governor embedded at the center of a cartel-engineered shadow empire. His encrypted key unlocked access to logistics hubs directly tied to the Sinaloa Cartel, and his digital signature appeared on 319 classified transfers. The implications rippled far beyond state lines. In a moment when President Donald Trump publicly reaffirmed America's zero-tolerance stance on cartel incursions, a stance covered by Reuters as part of Washington's renewed border security doctrine, this discovery threatened U.S. national prestige. If a cartel could capture a state from within, what did that mean for federal sovereignty, for public trust? For the balance between aggressive national security measures and the civil freedoms Americans expect. As federal teams traced 112 disguised container imports labeled as industrial equipment, the truth became unavoidable. California's highest elected leader had become the architect of the West Coast's most advanced cartel pipeline. Solaris was not corruption, it was a parallel system of power designed to outmaneuver the state it infiltrated. With violence rising in Mexico, political fractures widening in Europe, and global instability deepening, one question now overshadowed the entire operation. If a cartel can rewrite the power structure of an American state from the inside, what else remains vulnerable, and who will expose the next hidden empire? Stay alert, stay aware, and don't forget to follow this investigation as it unfolds. What if the true epicenter of California's collapse wasn't a warehouse, a casino, or a cartel safe house, but a governor's desk where state authority quietly transformed into a criminal command center? That was the chilling question federal analysts confronted at 6:12 a.m. when the decrypted contents of the first steel-sealed hard drive illuminated the FBI's Los Angeles cyber forensics lab. Earlier raids had seized drugs and suspects, but this discovery threatened the structural integrity of the state itself. The screen displayed a vast, meticulously engineered financial constellation labeled Project Solaris, a digital empire of 36 ghost corporations, 51 offshore accounts, 14 restaurant chains, and 5 nonprofit foundations existing only in paperwork. Money moved through these channels with surgical precision, bouncing across 4 countries and 3 continents. The laundering flow mirrored patterns flagged by Reuters in early 2025, when international watchdogs warned of increasingly sophisticated cartel state hybrid networks leveraging charity fronts and green energy grants to disguise illicit transfers. But the most explosive evidence was buried deeper. Every approval, every authorization, every masked directive originated from the same cryptographic key, Governor Alexander Alex Cortez, California's sitting chief executive. His digital signature appeared on 319 covert financial transactions. The files showed that under his leadership, Solaris operated not as an infiltrating force, but as a state-protected extension of the Sinaloa Cartel. Cortez had effectively built a second government, one loyal not to voters, but to criminal financiers who relied on political authority to secure narcotics routes. The revelations aligned with concerns highlighted by BBC and DW throughout January and February 2025, warnings that Western democracies increasingly faced internal threats where elected officials were compromised by transnational crime groups. California, it seemed, had become the most devastating example. As analysts dug deeper into the Solaris data, they traced 112 container shipments labeled as electronics and industrial equipment, but the manifests were falsified. The shipments carried precursors from Tijuana to Long Beach, then across the state's distribution network. Even more disturbing, 27 humanitarian aid shipments authorized by the governor were in reality high-volume narcotics convoys. The financial ledger added another layer of rot, 63 California Highway Patrol officers receiving monthly consultation bonuses. 19 Border Protection agents paid to relax inspection gates during cartel convoy hours. Multiple supervisory officials receiving funds through falsified training programs. These were not bribes, these were salaries. Solaris had built a parallel enforcement network. Federal investigators cross-referencing encrypted logs with licensing databases uncovered that many of the officers had been handpicked for special assignments, directly approved by the governor's office. Internal memos matched time-stamped border relaxations with high-value cartel shipments, each move coordinated with interstate transport slack periods, minimizing detection. To law enforcement analysts familiar with cartel logistics, the pattern was unmistakable. This was command-level collusion. And as President Donald Trump's administration intensified pressure on cartel infiltration, an effort reinforced by the Pentagon's 2025 Joint Border Security Modernization Plan, covered extensively by Defense News, the Solaris revelations landed like a political earthquake. The credibility of one of America's largest states was in ruin. The integrity of its institutions lay shattered. The true scale became undeniable when agents uncovered internal payout charts revealing Solaris had established tiered influence compensation for corrupted personnel. Bonuses ranged from $12,000 per month for patrol officers tasked with traffic rerouting to more than $50,000 for border protection supervisors who authorized green lane events short windows where cartel trucks passed without inspection. According to The Guardian's reporting on similar South American infiltration models, this tactic mirrors the methods used by organized crime groups to co-opt entire municipal structures without firing a shot. By 7:00 a.m., the federal war room met one conclusion. Solaris was not a cartel infiltration, it was a political engineered criminal architecture, and California's governor had transformed the state into Sinaloa's West Coast empire. As agents prepared the next phase of the investigation, a sobering question settled over the room. If one governor could build a shadow government for a cartel, how many other states or nations might be standing on the edge of the same abyss? For the sake of transparency and national security, viewers are urged to follow this story as it continues to unfold. What happens when a state stops functioning like part of a nation and starts behaving like a battleground? That question defined the dawn of Operation Nightfall. The federal response launched the moment Project Solaris was exposed. When the order came down, there were no negotiations, no political buffers, no symbolic warnings. It was a full-spectrum eradication mission designed to dismantle a governor-engineered criminal architecture before it could scatter into the shadows. At precisely 5:00 a.m. inside the Sacramento Command Center, a 40-foot operations map flickered to life. 74 red markers pulsed across Los Angeles, San Diego, Fresno, San Bernardino, and the Central Valley, every dot representing a Solaris node built under Governor Cortez's authority. The atmosphere felt less like a briefing and more like the opening moments of a national security crisis. Federal commanders coordinated with the Trump administration's Homeland Security Council, whose 2025 counter-cartel framework, covered by Reuters and Defense News, prioritized rapid neutralization of state-level infiltration. Now that doctrine was being tested under real-world pressure. Orders cascaded throughout the room. 200 federal agents, 41 SWAT teams, 22 Black Hawk helicopters, 9 armored MRAPs. One unified mission wiped Solaris off the map before dawn, reset its advantage. The operation began with a thunderous descent over San Bernardino. 4 Blackhawks roared toward a 60,000 square foot warehouse, officially registered as a logistics storage facility but internally documented as a chemical precursor hub. Armed contractors hired by the Sinaloa Cartel opened fire the moment federal boots touched steel. The rooftop erupted in muzzle flashes. Snipers aboard hovering helicopters cut through the darkness with arcs of suppressive fire. Tactical teams fast roped down the building's sides, sparks from ricocheting rounds lighting the night like fractured lightning. Inside, agents pushed through acrid chemical fumes. Steel drums labeled industrial solvents concealed nearly a ton of fentanyl precursor powder, a detail echoing recent Guardian and DW reports warning that Mexican cartel labs were increasingly decentralizing production into U.S. territory for strategic cover. The firefight lasted 13 relentless minutes. It ended when MRAP units smashed through the warehouse's eastern wall like a moving fortress, forcing the remaining gunmen to surrender. But San Bernardino was only the beginning. Across Los Angeles County, another battle unfolded in the Malibu Hills. A mansion built into the cliffs, an architectural marvel hiding reinforced steel doors, bullet-resistant windows, and underground tunnels served as a Solaris command bunker. When federal teams breached the front gate, 16 heavily armed guards opened fire from fortified balconies. Flashbangs exploded against granite walls. Drones overhead streamed thermal imagery of suspects fleeing into tunnel networks extending beneath the estate. Federal agents surged through narrow underground corridors lined with surveillance monitors, cash-counting machines, and encrypted server racks. One room contained a miniature war room map, schedules, convoy logs, everything needed to run Solaris like a shadow government. By mid-morning, the results were staggering. 287 arrests, 3.4 tons of narcotics seized, $27.8 million in cash and gold confiscated, over 200 firearms recovered, a hidden server farm, the operational brain of Solaris, was secured. California had not experienced a coordinated crackdown of this magnitude in decades. International media responded swiftly. BBC highlighted the unprecedented militarized domestic security operation. Al Jazeera noted that the U.S. appeared determined to prevent another state-level collapse like those seen in parts of Central America. DW reported concerns from European security analysts warning that the line between law enforcement and military-grade operations was blurring under necessity. This raised a deeper strategic dilemma. How far should a democracy go when a criminal network embeds itself into political authority? To protect freedom, must a nation sometimes employ overwhelming force? And if that force is necessary, does it risk reshaping the balance between civil liberties and national security? As the final gunshots faded and dust settled over seized compounds, one truth became unavoidable. Operation Nightfall proved that the battlefield was no longer across the border, it was inside the United States. And as investigators prepared for the next stage, a darker question hovered like smoke. If this was only the front line, what horrors waited in the heart of the Solaris machine? Stay with this investigation as the evidence deepens. How does a state heal when the enemy wears the same badge, salutes the same flag, and swears the same oath? That was the haunting question gripping federal command as dawn broke over California, and the deeper layers of Project Solaris began to unravel. If the raids of Operation Nightfall exposed the cartel's infrastructure, what came next exposed the soul of the state itself. At 2:47 p.m., unmarked federal vans rolled quietly into parking lots across Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, Bakersfield, and Stockton. No sirens, no warnings, just warrants, and the grim understanding that the collapse of governance had spread far wider than anyone imagined. Inside these precincts were officers long considered pillars of public trust, yet the evidence recovered from seized servers now revealed something darker: systematic corruption woven through California's law enforcement hierarchy, engineered with precision by Governor Cortez's Solaris network. In downtown Los Angeles, the first arrest triggered stunned silence. 3 senior sergeants decorated, respected, once hailed for cartel-fighting leadership were escorted out in handcuffs. Bank records showed they had received monthly $10,000 training stipends signed off by a state office secretly controlled by Cortez. Their patrol logs matched the timing of Solaris convoys with chilling consistency. This was not occasional bribery, this was employment. The sweep continued. In Orange County, an entire strategic planning team was suspended after forensic analysts uncovered falsified patrol grids designed to accidentally divert units away from areas where Sinaloa shipments transited. DW and Reuters had recently reported on similar tactics used by Balkan and South American networks' criminal ecosystems that relied on bureaucratic blind spots rather than open warfare. California had suffered the same fate. It wasn't outgunned, it was out-administered. San Diego delivered one of the most shocking discoveries. Federal agents stormed the office of a deputy chief accused of leaking details of anti-cartel raids for over a year. In his desk were burner phones, offshore debit cards, and a ledger documenting payouts to 11 local officers, each name coded according to Solaris protocol. Confronted, the deputy chief reportedly murmured, "You don't understand who's really in charge." His words echoed the Guardian's 2025 cautionary analyses of criminal state fusion in Latin America, where parallel chains of loyalty override official commands. Fraud extended far beyond police departments. 7 California judges were placed under federal protection after evidence revealed they had systematically reduced sentences for Solaris-linked traffickers. Their campaign donations traced back to political committees connected to Cortez's re-election network. BBC's January 2025 coverage of judicial interference by organized crime in Southern Europe described the same pattern softened the courts and the pipeline widens. And then came the legislature. 14 state lawmakers were quietly detained for questioning after encrypted emails exposed their role in approving infrastructure exemptions used by Solaris for smuggling corridors from storm drainage expansions used as tunnel routes to highway maintenance windows aligned with narcotics transport schedules. The psychological destruction was immense. Officers who had dedicated decades to fighting cartel influence now watched their mentors and partners escorted away in restraints. In San Bernardino, a veteran detective broke down upon seeing his lieutenant arrested. "He saved my life once he whispered to reporters. I never thought he'd betray everything we stood for." His grief mirrored the national mood. Trust not just in individuals, but in the system had cracked. By nightfall, the first wave of arrests totaled 41 compromised officers, 19 corrupted federal employees, 7 judges, multiple high-ranking officials, and investigations were widening. President Donald Trump, in a statement carried by Reuters and Defense News, warned that cartel state infiltration represented a direct assault on American sovereignty and vowed federal reconstruction of all compromised departments. But even supporters of aggressive counter-cartel tactics questioned what this meant for the delicate balance between freedom and security. Could civil liberties remain intact when institutions required such sweeping purges to survive? Solaris had hollowed out California's defenses without firing a single shot. It wasn't violence that broke the system, it was silence. And as federal teams prepared for the next phase, a haunting question rose over a shaken state like smoke over a battlefield. If criminals can build power through trust, loyalty, and quiet influence, how can a democracy protect itself without becoming something else in the process? Stay with this investigation, the most disturbing revelations lie ahead. What if an entire region, its highways, ports, charities, energy programs, and supply chains had been quietly redesigned to serve a cartel's empire? That was the devastating realization emerging inside the FBI's secure vault room at 6:40 p.m. Analysts projected Solaris' master schematic across a 40-foot digital wall. The illuminated threads didn't resemble a state government. They resembled a hostile takeover, one executed without bullets, without riots, and without public awareness. The true Solaris machine was far larger than California. It was an interstate narcotics empire built in plain sight. At the map's center pulsed a red label Solaris Corps Western Distribution Authority. It wasn't a code name. It was a title of governance, the signature of a shadow administration operating beneath the official one. Governor Alexander Cortez had not been an accomplice. He had been the director. The seized servers revealed that 82% of all fentanyl entering the U.S. West Coast in the last 2 years passed through Solaris-managed routes. This figure aligned with 2025 BBC and Reuters assessments, showing a historic spike in West Coast synthetic opioid flows linked to newly decentralized cartel distribution hubs. What stunned federal officials was that California itself had been engineered to become the cartel's crown jewel, not merely a gateway, but the operational headquarters. From California, Solaris extended into multiple states. Nevada trucking contractors tied to Las Vegas nightlife groups transported chemical precursors under nightlife logistics manifests. Oregon Green Energy grants masked precursor shipments through sustainable agriculture programs, a tactic similar to schemes flagged by DW and The Guardian in emerging corruption cases in Eastern Europe. Arizona highway inspection chiefs bribed through offshore debit cards, cleared Sinaloa's agricultural convoys disguised as produce shipments. The infrastructure was staggering. Solaris had the capacity to move 2.5 tons of narcotics per week without triggering a single automated alert. Shipping logs were pre-altered before drivers began their routes. Way stations were shut down under maintenance orders precisely during convoy windows. The system functioned with the efficiency of a government and the impunity of a criminal syndicate. Hidden communication channels revealed an even darker dimension. Cortez and Sinaloa logistics directors communicated through documents disguised as state policy memos. One memo labeled Water Conservation Strategy 14B was actually a routing plan for chemical shipments through agricultural corridors. Another titled Homeless Relief Distribution Plan contained instructions for hiding fentanyl tablets inside charity relief packages distributed through nonprofit partners secretly controlled by Solaris operatives. The laundering operations were equally sophisticated. Over $1.2 billion had been funneled through renewable energy initiatives, luxury real estate developments, and hospitality projects across downtown Los Angeles. Each transfer was fragmented into microtransactions sent through banks in Cyprus, Belize, and Malta before being reintegrated into California as international investment capital. Analysts from James and Defense News noted that this structure mirrored tactics used by Russian and Balkan organized crime networks to integrate illicit funds into legitimate markets without detection. But nothing compared to the final file Phase 7 Regional Stabilization Plan. It outlined Cortez's long-term objective to convert California into Sinaloa's primary U.S. production, distribution, and political safe zone. A parallel government validated by elections, reinforced by infrastructure, protected by corrupted officers, lubricated by billions. Federal analysts stared at the schematic in silence. This wasn't infiltration, it wasn't corruption, it was governance, criminal governance masquerading as legitimate authority. If uninterrupted, Solaris would have outlived elections investigations, perhaps even administrations. It was designed to become permanent. The implications shattered the boundaries of a state scandal. America's global prestige was at stake. How could the United States, under President Donald Trump's renewed promise of uncompromising national strength project power abroad, confront rivals like China and Russia, or lead democratic coalitions if a cartel could engineer a parallel government inside one of its own states? And perhaps more alarming, how many other states might be one compromised official away from the same fate? As the digital map dimmed and the room's lights flickered back on, one truth remained. Solaris was never just a cartel pipeline, it was a political insurgency, one that nearly succeeded. And it left behind a question Americans can't ignore. If criminal networks can build governments in the shadows, who will defend the real one? What happens to a state and a nation after the enemy is exposed, the networks dismantled, and the truth finally dragged into the light? The answer arrived slowly, painfully, as California confronted the aftermath of the most extensive political criminal infiltration in modern U.S. history. If Operation Nightfall broke Solaris' body, what followed revealed its lingering shadow, a society forced to confront how close it came to losing democratic control without a single public alarm being raised. When the final servers were secured and the last corrupted officials removed from their offices, federal analysts began the full reconstruction of Solaris' internal architecture. The deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became. Governor Cortez had not simply collaborated with the Sinaloa Cartel, he had engineered a second government, one that operated beneath California's institutions, consuming them from within. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Entire departments were placed under emergency audits, infrastructure funds were frozen, environmental grant programs were suspended pending federal review. Dozens of nonprofits found their operations halted as investigators traced their connections to Solaris' laundering pipelines. Public trust collapsed. Residents stared at their screens as BBC, Reuters, and Al Jazeera reported the same story. California, America's most populous state, a global economic engine, had been quietly redesigned into a cartel staging ground. The Guardian's analysis called it a warning for every democracy. Corruption does not march in with boots. It whispers in through paperwork. President Donald Trump addressed the nation in a televised statement promising a full federal reconstruction of the compromised agencies and declaring cartel state infiltration a direct threat to the sovereignty of the United States. Defense News later reported that the administration ordered an expansion of counter-corruption task forces integrating Pentagon cyber units to prevent similar political breaches in other states. Yet beneath the political declarations lay a deeper question haunting federal leadership. How could a democratic system be hollowed out so silently? Solaris succeeded not through violence, but through compliance. Not through intimidation, but through convenience. Not by overpowering the state, but by becoming the state. Democracy rarely collapses overnight. It erodes one bribe at a time, one exemption at a time, one ignored red flag at a time. The human toll was equally profound. Fentanyl-linked deaths already soaring nationwide according to 2025 CDC figures and reported widely by Reuters were now viewed through a darker lens. How many of those deaths were facilitated by a government pipeline disguised as humanitarian shipments? How many families lost loved ones because officials chose loyalty to Solaris over loyalty to the public? Communities devastated by narcotics now realize their suffering had been engineered, not incidental. Neighborhoods long plagued by drug trafficking saw the truth their cries for help had been muted by a political network profiting from their pain. And then came the fear. If a cartel could infiltrate California, what about Texas? What about Arizona? What about cities struggling with corruption from Baltimore to Chicago, as highlighted repeatedly in DW and Al Jazeera coverage? The nation began to understand a chilling strategic reality. The most dangerous threats to American power are Solaris nearly reshaped the balance between security and freedom in the United States. Had the operation persisted for another year, California could have become a fortress for cartel governance protected by elections, infrastructure, and legitimacy. The line between state authority and criminal authority would have blurred until neither could be distinguished. And so the ultimate question now belongs not to investigators, but to the public. If silence allowed Solaris to grow, what prevents the next shadow empire from rising in another state under another official behind another closed door? America reclaimed California, but the fight to protect its democracy is far from over. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and if this investigation matters to you, share it, because sunlight is the only weapon that stops corruption long before it becomes a government. California came closer to collapse than anyone realized. The FBI, DEA, and ICE raids that shook Los Angeles were only the opening act. Beneath the casinos, warehouses, and cartel fronts lay Project Solaris, a clandestine political criminal architecture engineered by Governor Alexander Cortez. Encrypted hard drives revealed that the governor had constructed a parallel government complete with shell companies' offshore accounts, corrupted officers, bribed judges, and falsified humanitarian shipments used to move narcotics across the state. Operation Nightfall, ordered with federal backing under President Donald Trump, unleashed a statewide crackdown exposing 112 compromised officials, massive precursor hubs, command bunkers, and an interstate distribution network that funneled 82% of West Coast fentanyl through Solaris-controlled routes. The system stretched across Nevada, Oregon, and Arizona, using green energy grants, charity programs, and falsified infrastructure projects to mask cartel logistics. The aftermath shattered California's institutions. Departments were purged, courts shaken, and public trust deeply damaged. International media from Reuters, BBC, DW, Al Jazeera, and The Guardian described Solaris as a warning for every democracy. Corruption no longer storms the gates. It enters through paperwork and silence. The final lesson is stark. If a cartel can build a government in the shadows, what protects the next state from the